Well, we do want to thank you for taking the time to attend our presentation, Successfully Navigate a System Migration. Our speaker today is Joe Saines. With 30 years of experience in the healthcare IT industry, Joe has led the implementation of numerous clinical and financial healthcare technology solutions and managed migrations across many platforms, including upgrades in Meditech. Joe has spent most of his career working within the hospital environment. In 2013, Joe joined Iatric Systems as the practice director for project management within professional services. The project management practice has successfully assisted organizations with navigating implementation of software applications and meaningful use technology. Now I'd like to turn it over to Joe to get us started.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the webcast. It's a pleasure to present this information to you today. As Chris said, I've been around for a number of years. I've got the implementation and migration scars to prove it. I still have all my dark hair for some reason. It must be good genes, but other than that, I have been involved in numerous migrations and implementations of systems. So I think today, about half of you, as I understand, are in the process of making a decision or have made a decision to migrate to a new system within the next 6 to 12 months. The rest of you are just thinking about it, and some are just trying to get some information about how to do this. So you've made a decision to migrate to a new system. So the purpose of this presentation is to hopefully give you some nuggets about the things that I've learned and been involved in, and some information to help you through the process and how to navigate this. It's nothing really new that a lot of us haven't heard, but it's good to just get it all in one presentation and hear about it. So just a real quick overview of the agenda of the topics that I'll be presenting. So we're going to begin by just talking about a background of what you need to do when you've made a decision to migrate to a new system and you're preparing the organization for this major change. Some of the major components around that. A big one is the risk involved with doing this and how to manage that appropriately. Certainly communication and marketing is a big component. And then some nuts and bolts around project management and how to manage the project, some key project components there. Then the actual go live and cutover planning, and at the very end to go over post go live reviews after the system has been implemented. So let's go ahead and just get started. So we've made the decision to migrate to a new EHR or upgrade to a new version, and there's many reasons why organizations do make this kind of change. Their legacy system has either reached the end of life. There's some clinical functional deficits within the system. Clinicians are just wanting more. End user satisfaction may not be where you want it, and you feel like you need to upgrade or go to a new system. You want to improve the patient experience. Let's say that you're a part of a corporation, or that you've merged with other organizations, and now there's a corporate office that's standardizing among all of its hospitals. You've decided to do an integrated approach versus best of breed, so that's the reason. Maybe there's some quality and safety improvements within the organization you want to make, but there's a lot of different reasons why an organization wants to migrate or upgrade their systems. The main thing here is that you clearly identify the goals and strategies around why you're doing this, and you want to have a very clear vision among the organization and leadership about why you're doing this. We've all been involved in projects where people that are in the project or that work in the organization don't understand or don't know why the organization is going through this change. You want to be very transparent and clear with the vision and the strategy of why you're making this change. And that mainly comes from just clearly documenting the goals that you're trying to achieve, whether they're clinical goals, financial goals. certainly some of the top things that you want to keep in mind is, we don't want to harm any patients while we're going through a migration strategy like this, and we don't want to bankrupt the organization. So those are the high clinical and financial goals, but then there's many goals that come in under that. So, one of the things that you want to talk about early on is, when you're preparing the organization for a change, is let's take the opportunity. It's a great opportunity to change how we historically have done things. So we've all worked in organizations where maybe you've had an HIS system in place for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you've just put changes upon changes upon changes and on top of the system, and you just do things because that's how we've done it for many years. So when you migrate to a new system, this is a wonderful opportunity to do however you want to call it, whether you want to call it re-engineering, clinical and business transformation, business process improvement. These are all terms used to, take a look at, your current state, identify current workflows and how you're doing things today, and, determine and decide, how we want to change things and improve our workflow and our operations to a new future state. One of the other things when you're preparing the organization early on is you're going to need to very carefully plan your resources for such a migration. These projects are an enormous strain to an organization and require a tremendous amount of resources. You really don't know how many people are going to be needed to when you take on a project like this until you start to really peel the onion back and look at all the different areas where you're going to need bodies. And that could include from project management and people to just oversee the project. And there could be a number of project managers, from technical project managers to just run, program managers that run the overall project. You're going to need analysts to build the solution, build the system, called the solution architects. So those individuals that have the technical expertise to go out and collect information, gather it, and then build the system of how you're actually going to use the new system. There are subject matter experts that you're going to need. These are the individuals, clinical and financial and administrative individuals who know how the operations work, how the workflows are needed. These are people that you depend on that know how their different areas and departments operate. Certainly you're going to need physician champions. Physicians are a key group that you're going to need a lot of participation from. You'll need to identify physicians that can step up and be seen as leaders in the organization through the various specialties. You'll need trainers, super users, individuals that will be trained on how to use the system or credentialed on how to be an expert and how to train others. You'll need to identify individuals that will have to be pulled out of their day-to-day work and become super users. So this is a scheduling and a budgeting exercise that you have to go through to identify who all of these individuals will be, and then maybe backfill their positions so that, when you pull them out of their daily work, and sometimes it could be for a period of 2, 3, 4 months, someone will have to backfill and do their job while they're involved in the migration. You'll have to identify individuals that we call at-the-elbow support, and so that's either folks internal from the organization, or many organizations go out and hire contractual folks to do this. These are kind of like SWAT people that love to go from go live to go live, and they work for companies that provide this kind of support, and they're experts in the particular EHR that you're implementing, and they just love to show up at the go live, and for several weeks, 2-3 weeks, sometimes longer, just provide at the elbow support. So they're the individuals that will go out and be visible on the units and with physicians, and when you first turn the system on, even though your staff has been trained and they've played with the system, they practice, when you first turn that switch on, folks kind of just sometimes forget or need help with getting through how to use a new system. The at the elbow support people are the ones that can step in and help those folks. And as the knowledge and the skill level of your staff increases, then the value of the at the elbow support staff goes down, and they can go away and they go to the next project, the next go live. You're certainly going to need technical engineers. These are folks, networking engineers and desktop technicians, to deploy. If you're going through a complete EHR migration and the system requires all new devices, you're going to need to do a major device deployment activity and plan for that. You'll need the appropriate technical staff to work on that. You may need to go out and do all kinds of new cabling, construction. If you're implementing advanced clinical systems as part of a migration, you may need to do all kinds of construction in either the rooms or in units to accommodate all kinds of new devices and technology that you'll be deploying as part of a migration effort. And then lastly, you're going to need a staff to keep the lights on and keep the legacy system running. So as you work on and the migration for 9, 12, 15 months, you need somebody to keep the old system running. And the hospital doesn't stop. You don't stop bringing up new programs or developing new reports, new screens. Someone's going to have to continue to work and support the old system, the legacy system. So you can see in just preparing the organization for this kind of change, a major area that you're going to need to spend a lot of time on is resource planning. Another area is, once you begin to organize and prepare for the project, is develop a good project charter and a governance structure. So this is just an example on the slide there of one where you can see where there's executive sponsorship, and there's a number of areas within underneath the project, from various teams, clinical, ambulatory, financial, administrative. There's also training and go live support component, project management, marketing, technology. That's one example of a governance or a structure that you might want to adopt. Certainly in the charter, you want to have a good overview of the project. As we said in the beginning, document your goals and strategies are very important. This is what we're trying to accomplish and achieve by going to a new system. The project charter includes, the major milestones and a timeline of the project. Certainly all of the requirements that are within the project, technical and functional or scoping requirements that are included. So what's in scope, what's out of scope should be in the charter, or third-party interfaces. Are you going to be implementing, as I said, advanced clinicals along with this HIS migration? So exactly, what's included and what's not included. So everybody's very clear within the charter of what's happening. You also want to identify all of the major risks that are known, and we'll talk a few slides about specific risk mitigation strategies. Want to identify your project members, clearly document what their roles and responsibilities are going to be. Who do they report up through? What's the escalation path when you have issues? And certainly when you get into this kind of major project, there's going to be decisions that are going to need to be made. So within the project chart, you want to clearly document what is your decision process. How are those decisions and escalations going to occur within the project, and how are the folks within these individual teams going to report up through the project chain. And lastly, you want to include certainly your policies and procedures around the new system. So what are the various policies that are associated with this kind of project? So let's just talk about one of the major components I think is one of the major success factors when implementing a major system or migrating to a new EHR is certainly the risk. So this is something that could either make or break a project, obviously, and so you want to clearly go through a formal risk assessment, identify where your risks are, document them, certainly develop plans to mitigate those risks, and then have continuous monitoring of each of these risks that you've identified, so that you are constantly looking at how are we doing with what we've identified as a major risk? Do we have proper plans in place? As a little cartoon there on the slide indicates, typically bad news doesn't get any better over time. You have to, you can't ignore it. So you have to address it. You don't want folks to not feel like they can't bring issues to the forefront, and you want the project teams to be transparent and be able to communicate what they feel are risk points or problem areas. Another big area is communication and marketing of the project. So you really want to, it sounds kind of corny, but you want to make it fun. You want to create a theme for your project, come up with a neat catchphrase of what you're doing. You can't communicate too much. Certainly you want to send, newsletters, screensavers. These are just examples. You want to do maybe little vignettes, videos of workflows, and post them on your intranet site so that the clinical staff can see, hey, this is how we're going to administer medications moving forward, or this is how we're going to do medication reconciliation or admit patients. You want to publish key dates on your intranet so that everyone in the organization can go someplace and see where, what are the major dates that are associated with this project, what are the milestones, make it very, very clear, very high level so that everyone is operating under the same, the same project plans. You want to have these, call them clinical readiness demonstrations. So what those are is, so as your clinical team is building the system, you want to demonstrate these major clinical workflows to the organization. Maybe it's to nursing leadership, or if there are clinical meetings that go on in the organization, you want to break these major workflows up and demonstrate them throughout the project. So by the time that your staff and your clinical team goes to training, that's not the first time that they would have seen these new clinical workflows. The more information that you can provide and demonstrate early on, the better the folks will be when they go to training. And we'll talk about training in a little bit. You also want to develop some kind of executive dashboard. So this is a real high-level dashboard for the executive team, which may, some examples of this might be a dashboard that has all of the major areas as that governance slide showed, and just to, have a red, yellow, green dashboard about how the major areas are doing. Maybe on this dashboard, clearly highlight the major risks that exist and how we're doing with monitoring those risks. Some other things I've seen on executive dashboards are recent accomplishments. So if you publish the executive dashboard once a month, you can list the recent accomplishments that have occurred, and then also the major activities that are coming up that are on the horizon. So at a glance, executives can look at this dashboard and see, okay, these are the accomplishments that we've had. These are the major milestones and activities that are ahead of us. If I look to each of the areas within the project, I can see that, okay, physicians are tracking okay, they're yellow, but they got these issues. Admitting and registration are doing good. Finance folks are doing well. You might have a section for technology so that you can have a high level status on where you are with your technology rollout. Whether there may be some issues with some third-party interfaces or device deployment. So just a very one slide dashboard that your executives can keep tabs on how the project is going. And again, just to get your communications and marketing departments to rally around you and just make this a fun thing. Have big posters and stuff all over the organization, in the cafeteria, and it sounds kind of corny, but the more you can rally the organization and the staff around why we're doing this and what's going on, I think the more successful the project will be. Excuse me. So let's just talk about some of the key project management components. So these are kind of some of the nuts and bolts around. Once we've prepared the organization and we've gone through our strategic planning and our project charter and our governance, and we've got a great communication plan developed, we've begun now to work on the project. So one of the major things is workflow redesign. So we talked about how this is a great opportunity to change how we operate and do things better. So in your workflow redesign, you certainly want to document your current state, all of your current workflows, how you do things today, and then take a look at how those are going to change, how we're going to improve, what we do. Take a look at your deficiencies that exist in your current state and build new workflows around that in your future state. And you want to do this using an interdisciplinary approach. You want to get every area involved. If you actually sit down and take a look at what it takes to admit a patient and what areas touch that, if you've ever been involved in a lean project or something like that, you'll know that almost every department touches that workflow or that when you admit a patient, from transportation to admitting, to nursing, everyone. So just the point here is just to include as many areas as you can when you're going through your workflow redesigns, because everyone will have something to add to to the workflow. And then a lot of your vendors give you best practices, and there's certainly industry best practices that are documented to enhance quality and safety. So as you're building the future state and you're going through your workflow redesign, you certainly want to keep in mind your best practice and make sure that you build those in. Today, many of the EHR vendors are doing a great job of documenting their best practice, because they've got a lot of experience about how to roll something out, and we'll go through with you on what's been successful for them in the past. And you want to maximize efficiencies in the system. So many times, you implement, been involved in projects where you implement a new system, and you implement maybe 30% of the technology or the functionality within the system. And so you want to avoid doing that, and maximize everything that the vendor has to offer. So as you're working through your workflows, understand how the system works and make sure that you're maximizing all of the efficiencies that come with the vendor that the system that you're migrating to. And, certainly you want to improve care. As I said, one of the top guiding principles should be that we're not going to harm patients. So we definitely want to improve the care that we provide, and that should be a driving force as you're working through your workflows and documenting how you're going to operate and work in the future. Is always keep the patient in mind of how we're going to improve the care that we're giving. So one of the other nuts and bolts here is training. Training is a huge component and aspect of a successful EHR migration. And just going to go through some of the major components around training itself. We have this thing called a role matrix where you're going to divide your entire staff in the hospital into various roles, because most of your EHR vendors, the way that you set up security and access are role-based. So you have your maybe you have your ICU nurses in one role, and a regular med-surg nurse in another role, your admitting clerks, and so on. So you want to build this huge matrix of all of your roles, and then start assigning all of your staff into those individual roles, so that everybody clearly understands that this is my role within the system on this matrix. That's very important to do early on. It takes a long time. It's very tedious, and it requires a lot of meetings with the leadership in all of the areas to understand the various staff members and their roles and what they do, and make sure that we have the appropriate roles established. We talked about trainers, credentialed trainers or super users. Definitely need people who've been identified that are going to train the trainer, that are going to be trained and going to learn how to be a system expert, and then train others in the organizations. So in addition to trainers, you're also going to want super users, and these are people that are going to work with the at-the-elbow support. These are folks on the unit that have been identified as someone that a go-to person as a power user. So as your at-the-elbow support folks start to go away, you're going to need to continue an ongoing plan of how to provide help for folks that need it on the unit. And that typically comes through your super users. We'll talk about Go Live in a few minutes, but super users certainly play a very vital role during the Go Live process. Training rooms. Can't underestimate how many training rooms, seats, or devices you're going to need within the facility. Many organizations have one or two training rooms for ongoing training, but when you plan for a complete system migration to a new system, and you're going to have to train everyone in the organization, it's just thousands of people, you're going to need a training facility. A lot of organizations that I've been involved in that go through this typically ramp up anywhere from 5, 10, 15 training rooms in the organization. So you're going to need hundreds of seats with computers, and somehow some tool to manage the registration and the use of all these training rooms. You'll need to, more than likely, go out and rent equipment like overhead projectors and podiums, maybe chairs and furniture. But just putting together the training rooms is an effort in and of itself, and requires a good logistics team and a good support services team. So as I said, you're going to need to develop a tool using Microsoft, some kind of Microsoft application, or there's many programs that you can go out and purchase that will help with the staff scheduling registration process. And I've seen this done several ways. I've seen staff being able to go in and self-register themselves for classes. So once you have your role matrix done and you know who is in what role and what classes they need to take, you can set all that up in the system and then turn it on and let folks schedule themselves. Sometimes that's an incentive for folks to get in there and schedule themselves for training so that they get the optimal times that they want. And so that that helps to promote and get the numbers up quickly. I've also seen it where, instead of doing self-scheduling, folks are assigned to set to various times that training is provided. Either way will work as long as you have a good tool for staff to use to register. There's various kinds of training that folks will have to go through. There's simulated training or computer-based training where they're just going through and they're flipping through screens and looking at functionality. And typically you want folks to go through that type of training, simulated training, before they get into a class and go through instructor-led training. And sometimes you may have to have your simulated training done in a proctored environment where they have to come to a classroom, one of your classrooms, sit down and go through the simulated training while someone is there to either help them or answer questions. And some places and for some staff, you may be able to do that on your own, either at home or what have you. And then you're certainly going to need to have instructor-led training after that, and that's where that'll be done by the trainers that you have trained up front as your trainers. Certainly want to talk, think about having proficiency testing so that when folks are done their training, they don't get their password until they have successfully passed a proficiency test. Want to make sure that your staff are prepared and ready to use the system on day one. And you have to come up with decisions and plans on what to do if someone doesn't pass. You'll have to come up with a score that you want to be passing, whether it's 70, 75, 80, and then, what is their plan for folks that can't achieve that score when they're doing their testing? Do they have to take the class again? Do they have to, or can they just take the test a second time before they have to go to class again? All of that. And then we talked a little bit about logistics. So you certainly want to put together what I call a support services group that includes, food services, security, parking, EVS, because you're going to need this group to support and accommodate all of your training activities that go on, and then your go live activities. And we'll talk a little bit about command centers and what happens during cutover. But you're going to need a team to work on the logistics around providing all of that activity. You just can't expect to train thousands of people without having maybe some dietary requirements or EVS to clean the training rooms after these sessions. Those are things that don't sound like they're real important, but when you sit down, you take a look at how you're going to accommodate sometimes hundreds and hundreds of people that hit your organization at one time, as far as coming to training or at the elbow support or go cut over or go live. Just the logistics around working with all of those people is very, very tricky and requires some planning. So let's talk about testing now. Testing is certainly just as important as training. There's all kinds of testing that exist, and this is just a list of some of the examples of testing. But you cannot, just as you can't communicate too much, you can't test enough. You have to just test and test and test. Certainly, one of the types of testing is functional or application unit testing. This is where we work on the individual applications and we determine that the functionality of the application performs as expected. So yes, we're able to go through the admission process and admit a patient, or we're able to put in vital signs, or abstract a case in medical records. So just the individual unit testing of the application, and you can do that. You can do that early on, and then after you've done that, you want to get into your integrated testing. So can all of these various system components all work together, and take a transaction from start to finish and have it work through multiple applications? And that's where you might want to pull in your third-party systems while you're doing your integrated testing, so that you can see if the transactions flow from one system to another system. If you've got a third-party PAC system or cardiology system or what have you, EKG system, those transactions are going to have to you're going to have to test the integration between all of those various disparate systems. Another type of system testing is just revenue cycle testing. So put all of your charging through its paces. Makes another, as I said, one of the other guiding principles is we don't want to bankrupt the hospital when migrating to a new EHR. So make sure that we go through some really detailed revenue cycle testing. Take a patient from start to finish, from when a patient is admitted and gets charges, has all the work done to them and has charges posted to them, and drops a bill and gets a bill out the door. So the whole and then payment comes in. It's the whole revenue cycle test. Some other types of testing is parallel. It's called parallel testing. This can be done either. I have here either closed medical record parallel tests or actual live parallel tests. But this is where you take a live example from your system that you're currently using today, and you put that same patient through its paces in the new EHR system. So if the closed medical record parallel test, you go to medical records and you get various scenarios, whether it's 10, 20, 30, however many scenarios you want to test of a patient, of different various types of patients. Take the medical record, everybody, you get a team of interdisciplinary team of individuals from all the different departments in one room, in one of these training rooms that you've built, and you go through the medical record, and you have to plan this it has to be very organized and very meticulous, but you put the patient in the test system through everything that the patient went through in the live system, every test, every transaction, and just see if the patient was handled the same way from your current system today to the system that you're building. And then you want to do user acceptance testing, of course. This is where you have individuals throughout the organizations sit down and work through the functionality and indicate that, yes, the system will work in my operations, and go through the workflows and can tell you that the system has been built and is working and will work for us as we work in our various departments. There's something called a technical dress rehearsal that you can go through, where you have an exercise one day or several days where you test all of the technology, all of the devices in the organization for printing. Printing's usually one of the big gotchas when you do a EHR migration. And so in your technical dress rehearsal, you certainly want to test printing of every printer, make sure that your trays are properly labeled, your prescriptions are coming out the way they're supposed to, labels are coming out the way that they're supposed to, reports are printing, and your devices all work and able to connect to the system. So that's the technical dress rehearsal. There's also what's called I don't have that here, but maybe a workflow dress rehearsal, where you have individuals again throughout the organization come together, and you just you put various workflows through the system, and so that folks can take scenarios that occur on the unit and put them through the test system to make sure that when we flip that switch, it is going to work, and we're going to be able to operate in our environment. And then lastly, as far as testing goes, you want to do some system performance and stress testing of the system. So very important, you don't want to turn the system on. Everybody's prepared, trained, and we're all ready to turn the system on, and you don't have enough horsepower or enough equipment to run the system in a live environment with thousands of people on it. So definitely want to stress the system before you go live, and make sure the response time is adequate and what you're expecting. So lots of testing that goes on. and just some other big key components that are successful factors in a project like this are your third-party interfaces. So this is where you've got a bunch of systems, other vendors out there that do all kinds of special things that your EHR vendor may not do, like EKG systems and cardiology systems, PAC systems. There's a ton of them. And so you're going to want to contact these vendors early on and develop interface development and migration plans, work on testing, and develop an inventory, first of all of these various third-party systems that are going to need to be interfaced, whether it's analyzers, medical devices. Are the interfaces real-time HL7 interfaces? Are they extracts? There's so many vendors that you probably transmit information to today that you've been doing over many years, and you want to just get all those out of the woodwork, identify them all, so they're all in one inventory, and that you're tracking the progress of whether the development is done and whether your testing is done around this. Certainly you want to have an integration plan where you take each of your third-party vendors, you do a scoping exercise. You may have to acquire an upgrade to a third party to work with a new EHR. Maybe you're going from EHR A to EHR B, so your PACS vendor is going to need to have a major upgrade to support the new system. So you got to have an acquisition plan. You may have to develop interfaces with an interface engine, and then there's testing. So your integration plan should include all of those various major areas: scoping, acquisition, development, and testing. And the other big gotcha of any of these kind of EHR migrations, in addition to third-party interfaces, are your reports. So the reports are a huge component, and you have to do an analysis very early on of your must-have reports. If you've been using your existing EHR for 10, 20 years, you probably have 5,000 reports out there that have been developed over the years, and certainly we don't want to migrate all of those reports over to the new system. So you'll need to do an analysis of all of those reports and identify which ones are must-haves to successfully operate each of your areas in your organization, because some of this information that you get today on these reports may go away, or there's other ways to get the information. It may now be online, so you may not need the report. But in any case, you're going to come up with a number of reports that you will have to develop, and so you will have to acquire development resources or train your staff on how to develop reports in the new environment. And that's a learning curve that goes on with that. So folks that currently today develop reports with vendor A may not necessarily know how to do that with vendor B. So you either have to train them and give them time enough to get good at that and learn how to develop those reports, or go out and get third-party resources to develop reports for you that have that expertise. In any case, you've got to do the requirement analysis up front, and that takes a lot of time, very tedious, meeting with various departments, finding out what they're using these reports for, and showing them that maybe there's a new way of getting the information, and then landing on an inventory of must-haves, and then making sure that you have a plan in place to have all those must-haves developed by day one. And some of them may not be day one. You may have some must-haves that are month-end, quarter-end, or year-end reports. And then you can't forget electronic forms. So even though you're maybe migrating to a new EHR where all of your forms are going to be online, and you're going to automate all of your electronic documentation, there's still going to be some forms that may remain on paper, either consent forms or forms the patients sign. And even now, in scope, in your strategy, you may include implementing, an electronic signature type of form where your consent forms today may not even be, paper forms. But you may still wind up with some electronic forms. So you just want to inventory those. So let's move from just some key project management components over to the exciting day around go live. So the days come. The picture on the slide is of the NASA command center. You certainly don't need something like that, but you will need to put together a command center structure. You'll need the space. Many times, your training is done and you've built some good training facilities so you can use the same space that you use for training for your command center. It's going to definitely have to accommodate a lot of people that will need to be there to address issues as they come up and fix things. So there's a lot of times it's your expert subject matter experts or your analysts will be at the command center. You'll need to develop a very detailed cutover plan. So that's typically 1,000 lines of, 1,000-line plan of very detailed of what goes on from, let's say that you are cutting over on a Sunday. So your cutover plan will include everything that happens, on that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And sometimes even a week before your cutover is when you start keying in your, some schedules, some appointment schedules, and that kind of thing. So that's one that you want that to be in your cutover plan as well. But you want to have cutover plan reviews where you sit down with an interdisciplinary group and you review the cutover plan line by line, and you do kind of a testing exercise where you pretend that you're cutting over and you go through the plan in the test system. We talked about at the elbow support. So in your go live and cutover plan, you want to make sure that you plan on all of these individuals. Sometimes it's hundreds of individuals hitting your site, possibly from a third-party vendor, staging them, getting them prepared, sending them out throughout the facility, making sure that they have badges, that they know where they're going. A lot of times they have to go through Joint Commission preparation before you even let them onto the facility. You have to do background checks. A lot of things that you need to do with your at the elbow support folks and planning and accommodating them. The super users are involved in your go live and cutover planning. These are individuals that are typically either out on the floors or are going to be in the command center working through issues as they come in through some kind of ticket system that you will need to set up. Because in a cutover, in a go live and a cutover, you can plan on there being thousands of issues being reported to the help desk and to the command center. And you'll definitely want a plan of how to log all of those issues into a system and make sure that you are monitoring the closure and the completion of those tickets, every day. So again, the logistical planning just around the go live. We talked about support services, how important it is to have all those various areas like security and parking and dietary and EVS, telecommunications. You're going to need a good phone system in your command center. Whether it's lines that are rolling over to different folks, or what happens when people are calling in and the analysts are on the line with other people. So telecommunications has to design how that's all going to work. And during the cutover process, you certainly want to have daily updates where you're going to want to schedule executive briefing sessions as well as departmental manager meetings. These are typically done on a daily basis, either in the morning or at lunchtime in the afternoon, where you get the leadership together in a room, go through the major issues that are going on, report on the successes and what's happening, so that everyone is on the same pulse of how the cutover and the go live is going on. So daily updates are critical. You want to have these meetings on the books and scheduled so far in advance, so leadership is aware that we're going to have these executive briefings during the go live process. And then leadership rounding is very important. So have your C-suite of individuals out and about, rounding the units and talking to folks just to get a pulse on how it's going and what are the major things that people are seeing. It's very important for your leadership to be visible and to be out there. And then lastly, you go live and everything's gone great. So you want to have your post-go live reviews. This is typically done, after the implementation. Certainly want to talk about your review, your project plan and your process. Did we meet our goals? How good was the scope? Or did we have scope creep? And what did we do well? How did things go? What things could have been improved? What opportunities are there? Did we have enough staffing, training, support, cutover? All the various areas that you want to evaluate and determine how you did with all those. Certainly want to review all of your open issues. Like I said, you're going to be prepared to log in thousands of tickets during the cutover and go live, the first several weeks of go live, and review anything that's open. And then, some time down the road, and this could be, 3 months, 6 months, you certainly want to get into what we call post-live optimization. So certainly there's going to be things that you've identified during the go live that, you want to optimize after you've gone live.